Hi, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hello. Yes,
so I think we have a short introduction from yourself now, and then we can move on to some Q&A.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm David Morrissey. I've never done anything like this before, so please, you have to bear with me. I'm an actor, and I grew up in Liverpool. And the house I grew up in, the family I grew up in, where we didn't really have the arts. We didn't go to the theatre a lot. We didn't do, we didn't really go to the cinema that much, to be honest. So most of what I got as a young kid was via the television, which I loved. And I would watch television a lot, and we would discuss it a bit, but I never saw it as an art form in any way. I went to a junior school which did plays, and we did plays like The Wizard of Oz and Joseph and His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and things like that. And I really enjoyed that. But when I left that school, I failed my 11 plus, which was an exam that you stood at that time, which decided what your secondary education would be. And I failed that. So I went to a secondary modern school in Liverpool. And we didn't do any arts at all. We didn't do any drama or anything like that. And when I was about 14, I really missed that. I really missed that I hadn't done any drama. And so I went out and I tried to find various youth groups and stuff. And I eventually found at my local theatre, which was the Everyman Theatre, that they did a youth theatre. And I joined that youth theatre. And then I started to work doing different improvisations, different plays. And the theatre itself, the Everyman Theatre, took the youth theatre very seriously, and we were used sometimes in the main house production. And from there, I decided that I really wanted to try and be an actor. And I worked in theatres around the country. I went to Wolverhampton at one point and did that. And then I was very lucky to get a TV show when I was about 17 called One Summer, which was a TV show for a newly formed television channel called Channel 4. And that was a great success for me. And then I decided to go to drama school. And from there, I went to RADA. I came to London and I went to RADA. And from there, I left RADA. I was in RADA for about 2.5 years. And then I went out into the profession. And I've been an actor now, a professional actor now, for about 30 years. So, yeah, that's me. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about acting. I know these are strange times, but I think we will get back to normal eventually. And so hopefully any advice I can give you will stand you in good stead if this is a career that you're thinking of going into.
Thank you, David. I guess initially it'd be really interesting to understand why the creative arts are important to you.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. As I've grown up, I've increasingly become very thankful that I grew up in a city where the creative arts were taken seriously and where there was quite an abundance of places for me to go to find it. I went to one youth theatre, but there was other youth groups around that did drama. Also, everybody I knew took music seriously. My family, as I said, they weren't really involved in the arts, but once I got out of my family setup and went into the city itself, then we had great art galleries. There was 2 brilliant independent theatres there, and then there was the big receiving houses, and then there was lots of music going off as well. So I was able to sort of find the arts very easily. They were at my fingertips, and they gave me a chance to express myself. Teenage life is quite complicated anyway, but I was able to sort of use the usual angst that we have as a teenager. I was able to get that out, express that in drama. My father had become very ill when I was young, when I was about 7, and he eventually died when I was about 15. And I took that in my stride when I was a young teenager, but as I got older, I found that gave me some emotional problems. But I was able to express them in the arts. And also, it was something I was good at. I had friends who were very good at sport, friends who were very good at academically, and I wasn't very good in either of those fields. There was other people I knew who were very good at any sort of work that they'd gone into, that they might have a father in a profession that they'd followed, and they were good at that. And I didn't have any of that. So I found something I was good at, and I mined it, and I put all my eggs in one basket, and I decided that this is what I wanted to do. My mother and my elder brothers were quite worried about me, because telling them I wanted to be an actor was like saying to anybody like I wanted to be an astronaut. Not that they thought I had ideas above my station or it was highfalutin, but because they had no way of helping me. It was a profession they had no comprehension of at all. So for them, it was a mystery, and mystery can be full of fear sometimes. So I had to find my way myself, and that was by badgering actors. At the Everyman Theatre, I was lucky enough to have actors in the company, people like Pete Postlethwaite, Jonathan Price, Anton Lesser, Tracy Allman was there. She was doing a Victoria Wood production. Really, amazing people that I could just badger, and none of them told me where to go. Everybody actually was very kind and generous with their time, and mostly their advice was go to drama school.
Fantastic. And just thinking about that advice and experiences that you had as a young person interested in the world of acting in the creative arts, what advice would you give to young people today who have an interest in the creative arts and in acting in particular?
So, for me, the main thing about being an actor, unlike friends of mine who were musicians, I couldn't really practice my craft in my bedroom. Sure, I could read stuff and I could learn speeches and I could sort of, do Shakespearean speeches if I wanted to or stuff like that. But I couldn't really practice my craft unless I had an audience or a group of people. And so what the Everyman Youth Theatre gave me was, it gave me my tribe, really. But now I feel that, what with, we can sort of record stuff on our phones, on our laptops, we can edit our own material. There's lots more ways of getting your stuff out there. But you need to be, for me, it was that sense of you needed to be collaborative. You needed to have people around you who not necessarily wanted to do the same stuff as you. You could have creative arguments, but that I needed people like me who wanted to produce stuff, whether that was theatre, whether it was television, whether it was film. So we were writing our own stuff. We were finding ways of recording that. In Liverpool at that time, there was a place called the Open Eye Gallery, and that was where you went and you hired a film camera. Or we would find Super 8 film and we would make films that way. But the easiest way was to do performance-based theatre. And we would write that, we would improvise that. If we were doing musicals, we would write our own musicals and we would get it out there. We would invite people to them. So that's what I would do. And I think the modern equivalent of that is getting stuff up online. But, you can be very boring in 10 minutes as well as you can be very boring in 3 hours. So when we were writing stuff, it was about editing stuff. We would make short films, Super 8 films. But we would also sort of have to be very creative. And now I get sent a lot of stuff. I get sent a lot of short films. I get sent a lot of monologue stuff, comic sketches that people have written and they want to get out there. And that's wonderful, but it's a crowded market and it's about what do you want to do? It's about finding your own voice, I think. And that, for me as an actor, was about finding people around me I could work with. And as I say, they didn't have to be sycophantic people, and I wasn't being sycophantic myself. You could have creative arguments in that way, but you needed to find people who wanted to tell their stories as well. And it starts with it's obvious that it starts with a blank page, and you have to sort of get writing, and you have to rewrite, and it's exciting, but it can be boring as well. But you have to sort of want to do it and be hungry enough to be able to do it.
Fantastic. I think that's really interesting. And one of the questions that I know you've been asked in Speakers for Schools events in the past and I think our viewers today are interested in is, did you ever consider any other career apart from acting? Was there anything else that you thought as a teenager, maybe this could be for me?
So the short answer to that is no. I mean, what I found was a place I wanted to work. So when I first went into the Everyman Theatre, I found the place I wanted to be, which was a creative hub, really. It was a brilliantly run place, and it also had the support of the main theatre. So we were taken seriously very quickly. We were given the main stage, we were given the lighting rig, we were given all our plays were reviewed by the local press. So, you know, if I hadn't have been an actor, I would have been involved. I knew I was going to be involved in this world in some way. I didn't know how that would be. I was hoping it would be through acting, but it might have been through scenery, you know, it might have been through props, it might have been through directing, it might have been through any sort of profession inside there that went towards putting on a production. And so I'd found my world, and I would have had to have chosen a profession inside that world in some way. I'm very lucky that it was the first thing I wanted to be was an actor, and I've become an actor. But if that hadn't have worked for me, and there's been many times in my life where I thought it's not working, I'm going to have to choose something else. Whenever I've had that thought, I've looked for a job that's inside that profession. I haven't thought, you know, I'm going to give this up and become an accountant, or I'm going to give this up and become a lawyer, or anything like that. I've always thought I'm going to stay inside the domain of the art. And that's where I wanted to be. Because as soon as I walked into the door of the Everyman, into that youth theatre, I found the people I wanted to be with. Not only was it creative, but there was something inside the people in that room that I connected with in every aspect of their life. I met people from different walks of life, different sexualities, different ethnic backgrounds. And I started a conversation with those people that was expanding my world away from the world that I'd come from. And I wanted to be in that world in any way. And now, even now, when I travel the world and I go to theaters, or I do things, you know, with refugees, and I do things with other charities around the world, it's the creative arts that I get involved with. And I see the power of that all around the world. And that's the place I want to live in. That's the place I want to sort of exist, really.
That's fantastic. It sounds like the Everyman was a real inspiration to you. And I know something that our students are very keen to ask is, who inspires you? Is there anyone in particular who inspired you when you were younger, or anyone who inspires you now who I guess helps drive forward that career and that passion for what you do?
Yeah, I get inspired all the time. I'm inspired by good work. I mean, it sounds glib, really, but even growing up as an actor, I would meet lots of actors and they would get really angry at good work because two things would happen to them. One, they'd think, why isn't it me? Why aren't I up there doing this? Or they'd think, God, they're so good, there's no point trying, really. And I've been very lucky that I've never really thought that. Whenever I've seen great work, it's inspired me. So I do suffer from jealousy a lot. And, you know, I look at people and think, God, they're so good, or whatever. But I do find it inspiring rather than debilitating. And when I was growing up, you know, the actors I saw on that stage, on the main stage of the Everyman, would inspire me. And they would be doing, you know, what was called at the time, they were sort of small touring scale productions, and they were by companies like Plains Plough, were a great company at that time, Red Shift. There was lots of small independent theatre companies that were creating their own work. And there was a company called The People Show, And they would be doing stuff that was so inspiring that they created from nothing. And so they were inspiring to me. But I also find inspiration from other walks of life. I find when I see people being creative anywhere, with very little, that really inspires me. I find stories inspiring, and they don't have to be, you know, sometimes you look at stories and you think they have to be uplifting, and sometimes, you know, stories can be devastating. But in order, what people have gone through in order to bring their story to you, I find that inspiring. I find both, you know, the enormity of our world is very sort of, can be quite mind-boggling. But when you see stories from around the world and the similarities of those stories in any one situation, and that can be class struggle, it can be sort of identity politics, it can be whatever it is. It can be that thing of, you know, the coming of age story. It can be about people not having a voice, trying to find a voice. They're universal things that people go through all the time. And what they have to go through in order to bring their story to you is, I find that very inspiring. And I don't really have to look for inspiration. I see it all the time. And I'm particularly seeing it now in the world, which is very challenging for lots of people. I see it, and I see it not just in the arts, but I see it all over. I see people doing extraordinary things. And what I look for in my life, you know, is it's that thing of extraordinary events by ordinary people. I don't believe in ordinary. It's always that strange thing sometimes when people say he was just a normal person. I never believe in normal. We all have our own idiosyncrasies. We all have our own stories and our own fears. So, you know, that brings me to things like character. When I'm looking at character and how I build character, what makes me laugh mightn't make you laugh. You know, what makes me frightened mightn't make you frightened. And so when I'm building a character, I'm looking for what makes this man tick. And what I have to do is go back before our story begins, before the play or the film or the television begins. And I create a backstory for this person, which starts with their childhood. Sometimes it starts with their parents, because I think we are all products of our parents. And it becomes about building a character for this person, that what's he trying to hide? What's he frightened of? How does he relate to authority? How does he relate to people of the opposite sex? How does he relate to, you know, people? Is he trying to dominate people? Is he subservient? Things like that. All those things come together from our backstory. And that's what I work on all the time when I'm trying to create character, is the things that make us tick. And it's very important to find that via a backstory for me. That's where I start with my work.
That's fantastic, thank you. And a question that I, again, know will be very popular amongst our viewers and students who are tuning in is, what has been the highlight of your career so far?
Well, I've had many highlights. I've been very lucky enough to sort of have a lot of points in my career where I think that's it. You know, this is a great point. The important thing for me, again, I would always say, is that make sure that you enjoy that. As a younger actor, what happened to me was I was so sort of in an angst place that I was so sort of, I felt that suffering was very important for authenticity. I felt that, you know, if you had no pain, you had no gain. And that meant that when I was in the middle of something that was creatively wonderful, either at its moment or at its transmission or in the theatre, I wouldn't have let myself enjoy it, because I felt that that was spoiling it in some way. That real creativity couldn't be found in happiness or joy or the expression of that. I don't believe that anymore, and haven't believed that for a long time. But now, and what's been happening to me in the last, say, 20 years, is that when something is joyful and good, I make sure that I feel it, that I experience the goodness of it. Because you never know. Acting is such a precarious profession. You never know when it will come again. So I've had lots of highs and I've had lots of lows as well. And you know, it's important to accept all of those things as they are. That you know, I've had times of great unemployment or great adversity when things haven't been going well for me. And you know, you've got to know that's a circle, really, that you know, you'll be back at the top at some point. But also just to let that sit with you, to not fight that too much, to let that happen, and learn from it. You know, you have to learn through those lessons. So, you know, but I've been very lucky, and I've had great experiences in my life as an actor, and you know, but I'm still in a place of real discovery. I'm very, you know, this, as I say, this time is a very odd time because we're in a time of long enforced reflection, and I'm sort of excited by it. You know, I'm worried about it as well. You know, I have a lot of fear around it, not just for myself, you know, but mostly for everybody else, how we will come out of this, what the world will look like on the other side. But I think in history, we've faced those things before as well. So it's an interesting time for me, and it's a time for great reflection and great discovery as well, great personal discovery.
I think that's really interesting, and I know a few viewers have asked if there is anything that they can do to learn more about acting in the creative sectors whilst they're at home at the moment.
So yeah, I mean, the obvious one is reading. I mean, I'm using this time myself to get a lot of reading in the books I've been promising myself. Also writing. I write a lot of stuff. I mean, and it's not for public consumption, but it's stuff that is about getting my thoughts out. Sometimes I'll write in character. Sometimes I will write a lot of sort of, not plays, but I will write a dialogue between people sometimes. Also, what I will do is I will read out loud, and I will read in character. I will read in different voices. I will sort of play with that. That's important for me. You know, my craft is the spoken word, so I want to be exercising that. That's basically my guitar in the bedroom, is doing that. But also communication. You know, my whole thing is communicating with friends and family over the internet, and listening to them, listening to what's going on in their life and their stories, and emotionally what's happening to them, and finding out what that is. I think a lot of what we can be doing in this time is looking at, you know, sometimes in my life I will go into an audition, or, you know, I will be in a situation where people say in a rehearsal room, this bit isn't working, let's go somewhere else. And you have like this in your brain, you have a character box of very broad stroked characters that you think, oh, it's this person or it's that person. Or I remember I worked with this guy once and he did this thing, he walked like that, or he used to have this specific thing, that how he talked. And I would, you know, as a young actor now, I would be working on that. I would be working on my character box of tricks, of things that I have, and then getting more complex with them, getting more complex about finding their backstories. How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they react to people? You know, a lot of what people are doing in everyday life is they're hoping that people don't find out their deepest fears, that they don't, you know, a lot of actors talk about the time they'll get found out. When will people find out I can't act? When will people find out that I'm not as good as they think I am? That type of thing. And I think everybody is working on that basis, whether they're creative artists or not. It's that imposter syndrome. So, you know, this is a time when I'd be working on looking at different characters and how we could do it, working on accents, working on building that, the building blocks of character creation. That's what one could be doing now. And certainly reading. I mean, you know, if you read the great novels, if you read Dickens, for instance. He writes each character in a vernacular. So when you get to a certain character, you're in their speech patterns very quickly. So things like that I would read a lot of American literature as well. At the moment, I've just been reading a wonderful author called Carson McCullers, who was an American author, and she wrote great characters in her books. So, things like that. Short stories, I would read out short stories. I would read them out aloud. I would sight read them. And then I'd also do a thing where I would work on them for a week and read them again and see what the difference is between those two things. Again, they're not for public consumption. They're for your own development in your life as a performer.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We do have a handful of student questions that have been submitted as well, which we will not be able to get through all of the questions that have been submitted, as there's quite a few hundred that have been put to us, and I don't think we have that time. But first off, our students are really interested to know, what is your favourite part of your job and of your kind of career?
Well, I don't know about my career, but my favorite part of my job is actually being on set or in a rehearsal room or being with a company. I love that. I love being with a group of creative people. My favorite part of, when you go into rehearsal for a play, on the first day you walk in and it's packed full of people. I mean, there's just loads of people there. And you meet everybody, and then you sit down and you do a table read. It's similar when you're doing film as well. You'll walk in and you'll do a table read, and it'll be packed full of people. And then what happens is all those people go away, and it's you and the director and the other actors. And that's my favorite bit. My favorite bit is to then you start unpacking the play, unpacking the script, working on ideas, sharing ideas. And I love that. And I love, I love performing, but I also love rehearsing. Rehearsing is a really, particularly when you're doing a play, that idea that everything is up for grabs, that you can go down blind alleys, you can hit walls, you can get things wrong. I don't ever use the word fail. I don't believe that there's a failure, because everything, all the best stuff I've ever done comes from getting it wrong first. Or not getting it wrong, but from hitting a wall, from exposing something that's a flaw, possibly. But you only get things to become alive and really creative by slightly getting it wrong first. You have to go through those missteps before you get the great stuff. And in theatre particularly, that's what I love, finding that stuff, trying stuff out. Being brave. And who knows, you might get to the theatre, you might open the play, and those things are still there. You haven't quite cracked it, but at least you're trying. I don't like to play safe in that way. And that's true in films as well, and TV. So my favorite part of the job is working with other people, other creative people, and really messing it up, tearing it up, throwing it up, and seeing what happens. Really, that's my favorite bit. In my career, I don't know whether I have a favorite moment at all. Really, it's all gravy. I'm really, I count my blessings every day that I'm in a job I love. It was the job I wanted to do. It was the job I hoped I would grow up to do, and it's the job I'm doing. So, and I love every minute of it, if I'm honest.
That's fantastic. And just thinking about those times when there might have been walls or something that you've worked to overcome, particularly on stage. And one of our students have asked if you've ever had stage fright, and if you did, how have you overcome that?
Yes, I have actually. I mean, in a way, what I've learned to do is love my nerves. The times I'm not nervous is the times I really worry, because it means I don't care. So I've sometimes done a job and I've gone, something's missing. What's missing? I don't know. And it's the fact that I'm not nervous. And then I've got really upset with myself, because it means that I don't care as much as I should. And I'm glad to say that's quite a rare occurrence for me. I like being nervous because it means I want to do a good job. It means I care about the job. I care about myself and the other people in the job. I want to get it right, and that's where my nerves come from. But of course, nerves can tip you over into another place, which is where you become incapacitated by it. And that is when you have to, there are things you can play with. Sometimes for me, I'll walk on stage and I'll just imagine one person, probably a person I know, loves me and I love them, and I am telling the story to them. Also on stage, sometimes the best thing about nerves is you're just concentrate, and this is sort of what you should do anyway. Just be with the other actors. Just be with them, let them hold you, you hold them, they're the safety net. They and the play are the safety net. So trusting your fellow actors to help you and guide you and hold you, that's the other thing about it. But if I'm not nervous, I'm worried. So you have to trust your nerves, because they're there to tell you that you're in the right place, that you care. And sometimes I can be very, very nervous in the wings of a theatre, and I'll walk out on stage and they're gone. And I'll walk off the stage and I'll think, wow, what just happened? But, you know, it's learning to embrace, feeling the fear, you know, they say feel the fear and do it anyway. You have to acknowledge that you have nerves. You have to acknowledge that you're frightened, and you have to embrace that. And that helps you walk forward. The worst thing is to go, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous. Who said I'm nervous? I'm not nervous. And then you walk on, and halfway through a sentence, it'll hit you. And you just have to be able to deal with that. And the way you deal with it is by doing it. There's no substitute for doing the work. So if you're nervous and you think, I can't do it tonight, and you run away, then you will always be nervous. And if you go, I'm nervous, oh my God, you know, I'm going to fail, I'm going to let everybody down, and you walk on stage and you realize that you didn't do that, then you get to a knowledge about yourself. And I've been on stage where I've been shaking like a leaf. I've been on stage where I've thought everybody could tell that I'm stuttering, that I'm nervous, and I've walked off, and the other actors have gone, no, it was great. You know, they don't know it. The audience don't know it. Sometimes you just have to go through it. There's no substitute for absolutely doing it. You just have to be brave and walk right into those nerves, walk into the fear, and love the fear, I would say.
I think that's fantastic advice of anyone who's thinking about a career, any career actually, in terms of embracing nervousness and helping build that confidence as well. One of our students has asked, how do you decide what productions that you're going to work on?
There's many different things for that. The main thing is what I don't want to do is do the thing I've just done. So, you know, if I do something like The Walking Dead and I play the governor, and that's a very iconoclastic role, it's a very, you know, he's a guy who's dealing with many different things. Then the next role, I don't want to play that. I don't want to do that again. I want to be challenged in a different way. And then I might want to go into something that's a bit more comedic, or I might want to go into something that's a bit more loving, or something that's a bit more understated, or whatever. I like to change it. So that's how I really choose roles. Sometimes I choose roles because I want to work with a specific person. You know, I've done certain jobs where there's no script, and the director will come to me and they're writing, they'll say, look, we don't really know what this is. It's going to change. Do you fancy coming on board? And I go, I love you as a writer. I love you as a director. Yeah, I'll jump. Every job is a leap of faith. You know, everything is a leap of faith. You never know what it's going to be. But I want to work with good people. I want to work with challenging people. I want to work with people who excite me. I don't have to necessarily like those people, but I do have to admire them and want to be in their orbit. So sometimes it's about that. But mostly, you know, it's about working with great people, people I admire, and also not repeating myself. I don't want to be in the role I've just done.
That's great. We just have time for one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And that is, where's the most interesting place you filmed or performed?
many different places. I once made a film inside a prison, in a young offenders prison in up north somewhere, and that was very interesting. That was it was tough, but it was also quite illuminating for me, being inside a prison. I filmed in the middle of the Kalahari Desert at night when it was freezing cold, and in the middle of the day when it was boiling hot. I've filmed, you know, on Blackpool beach when we were getting cut off by the tide coming in, and we kept rolling. People were shouting at us to get off. I've filmed all over, you know, in the middle of Georgia doing The Walking Dead. That was pretty challenging, not just for the heat, but the bugs and the snakes and stuff like that. You know, I've filmed all over, and I like it. I mean, I filmed up in the middle of the Scottish mountains when it was freezing cold, and we had very little. We weren't wearing very much, and it was full of snow, and we had to run through this snow and fall into this river, and it was freezing cold. But you know what? I love all that. I mean, I really love it. It's not. I remember standing in a field with Andrew Lincoln. We were covered in blood. There was it felt like every fly in the county was coming at us. There was ticks and snakes. We were boiling hot. We stunk. We'd been working for about 12 hours. And we looked at each other and we both went, isn't this great? This is the dream. We are living the dream. So I've been in really horrible conditions and loved it. I've also been in fantastic places. The most air-conditioned studio, you know, great sort of food, wonderful sort of atmospheres, and not enjoyed it for other reasons. So, you know, the location for me is never a problem. And I think most actors like to be challenged in that way. And I love it. I love being on a film set anywhere. I was in New Orleans when Katrina came and blew the whole place away. And that suddenly just made me go, you know what? This is just a job. I'm just doing a job, and this is people's lives here. And it really made me go, you know, put my place in perspective. Like what's happening now. It really put my life in perspective. And I enjoy my job. I love it. I take it very seriously when I'm doing it. But I don't, you know, it's not the be all and end all. And I try to take myself not that seriously. I really used to take myself very, very seriously. Now I'm very serious about my work, but I try not to take myself too seriously.
That's fantastic. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. So a huge thank you to everyone who's tuned in.